this place I was in, I was kind of maybe a couple of 100 feet above the ground. I was not like on the ground like in a body, but I was in full consciousness, and the skies were this beautiful yellow instead of blue. And but from that day, my fear of death left. Um, I knew that I knew for sure that I'm not this body, that I'm more than that.
Hey, what is up, everybody at Soul Inspired? Thank you so much for subscribing. I just want to say a quick thank you to everybody who's been following the show this far. The next episode today, we have Regan Forston with us. He's an amazing guy. He's had a near-death experience and knows tons around hypnotherapy and past life regressions and things like that. So you want to stay tuned. I do want to give a little heads up that we had some technical issues with this where he was having some internet latency issues. So please do bear with us through the entire episode. But if you do listen through, you will still get some amazing conversation pieces that really open up the realm of spirituality and the near death experience, as well as hypnotherapy. So once again, thank you so much to everybody who's been supporting the channel. I will see you on the next one soon. So I'm excited to have you here today, Regan. Thank you so much for joining the So
Thank you,
Inspired.
Joe. Yeah, coast to coast today because I'm here in San Francisco
That's right.
area.
6 a.m. where you are.
Yeah,
So I appreciate you getting up bright and early to talk about this. You clearly had an experience that shifted you at some point in your life, right? If you look at your entire life. And I generally go back to people's childhood a little bit. And I try to get a little bit of an
yeah,
understanding of the type of person you were growing up and when this shift happened. You know, how kind of if you can lead us in from childhood up until this first experience
yeah.
that you would have had.
Okay. Um, yeah, actually, when I was 4 years old, went to bed one night, and all of a sudden, I'm awake, but I'm on the ceiling, looking down at my body, and scared the heck out of me.
Wow.
And so I ran into my dad's room, and I couldn't quite explain what was happening, but he came in my room and took the broom and went under the bed and the closet and said, "Well, there's no boogeyman here," or something. Well, the next night it happened, and the night after that it happened. And so, what does a 4 year old do? I became kind of afraid to go to sleep. So my solution was, as I sat with my back up to the wall, and I tried to hold my eyes open so I wouldn't go to sleep. But eventually I did. And then when I eventually did, but then I opened my eyes and there was two two men standing right in my room, and they were in white, and they just said, "It's okay." I'm like, "Oh, good," and closed my eyes. And that never happened again until I was in my 20s. There was a spiritual path that found me called Eckankar. They're a worldwide religion, but they don't proselytize anything like that. But when I contacted them, basically, in a nutshell, they gave me a word to sing. They said that would be at a vibration that would open me up to having what we call soul travel experiences. The word was Hu, H-U. It's an ancient name for God, I guess, and some religions are familiar with it. And it's sung, it's real simple. It's sung like Hu. Like there's there's Om, people know about and that, but the Hu. So I was determined I was going to have an out of body experience. I was going to have a soul travel experience. So I did that religiously for about 6 weeks. And then after 6 weeks, I sang it, kind of fell off to sleep a bit. And then I woke up in a different world. Um, and I can still see it now, even though that happened. Oh my God, I'm almost 75 now. And that happened when I was in my early 20s. So about probably 50 years ago now. And this place I was in, I was kind of maybe a couple of 100 feet above the ground. I was not like on the ground like in a body, but I was in full consciousness, and the skies were this beautiful yellow instead of blue. And I was looking at what appeared to be like wheat fields. So I can say here, kind of rolling hills, and in about every acre of these hundreds of acres I was seeing, it's like a sentinel, a big tree. I mean, like kind of, I felt like buckets of love were just being dumped all over. And and then I said the F word to myself, oh, eyes. I woke up, and I shook my wife awake, even like, oh my God, I think I just visited another place. but from that day, my fear of death left. Um, I knew that I knew for sure that I'm not this body, that I'm more than that. And that started me on a spiritual awakening journey, you know. Um, so later on, I was a comedian for 30 years. Um, Actually, a clown before that. I did like 4,000 children's birthday parties.
Wow.
And that led me to being an adult performer as a ventriloquist comedian. Did corporate shows all over America and did Vegas. And it was a beautiful thing. I mean, it was one of the fun parts of my life is having that ability to get people to laugh, you know.
Right. Right.
Uh, and then the 2008, the financial crisis hit, and then all of a sudden companies aren't, you know, paying you $5,000 to come in and do an hour show. It's like more like 500, you know. I couldn't make a
Right.
living. So I was following by this time now, because of having the spiritual experience, I started having visitors in the dream state or in meditation, where a guide or somebody would show up and they would teach me something about kindness or how to be less selfish. But something happened when I was in there, when I realized how the mind works and how if there's a program you have in your mind, in a sense, you can take that program out, put a new program in. And I said, this is amazing. So part of me decided to wanted to help people with their issues rather than make them quack like ducks, you know, instead of making fun of them. So that started me on that. So people would come to me once in a while and they would say, hey, through hypnosis, you can go to past lives, right? And I go, yeah. I mean, I've heard that. So I started doing some sessions and I was blown away at how easy it was for people to, uh, you know, experience a past life. Um, and then fast forward about 15 years after doing that, and I find myself, which everybody thought was on my deathbed. I was my girlfriend had bought me a ticket to take me to Hawaii for my birthday, and I felt a little sick getting on the plane, but I thought it was just something I would shake. And by the time I got off the plane in Hawaii, she said, "I'm taking you to the emergency room." So
Mm.
we went there, and they said, it look, you know, did an X-ray and everything. They said, "Looks like you have stage 4 cancer."
Oh,
Flew
wow.
me to another island. I ended up 2 months in a hospital in Hawaii, and while I was there, sitting all that time, it's just the weirdest thing. All these things come in your mind because you got nothing to do. I remember a book called Journey of Souls back in the 90s, and it was about two relatives that had passed on. He was an atheist, by the way, which is very interesting. But he was so curious that that happened. He started learning a process where over, oh gosh, 30, 40 years, he helped 7,000 people go to the other side and come back. And it's similar to a near-death experience, but it's elaborate because he found a way to do it very scientifically.
Mm.
You know, a way to get people to a certain state of awareness. It's like, and like what I do with I've done with hundreds of people now is um, I just have them go through the process of falling asleep, but they're listening to my voice. And if I wasn't communicating with them at one point, they would just fall asleep. Scientifically, it's like when theta waves start coming in. Like right
Mhm.
now, you know, our brain waves are real close together at beta. And as you meditate or relax, they've some people in hypnosis, they go to alpha, then theta, where they usually fall asleep. Well, because I'm communicating with them, I keep them right on the edge of falling asleep. And it appears now, just like I had to experience, that anybody, and we're about 90% successful, anybody can, you know, go to a past life, see themselves pass away, turn around and say who's there. And there's always a guide, an angel. It's different for different people. Like it with me, who showed up in my experience was Rebazar, and that's an ascended master. He's the one that I had seen. From there, you get to explore the afterlife for, I've had, I was there for 3 hours, 33 minutes. That's the name of my book, 3 hours, 33 minutes in heaven. That's my personal experience. But the clients that I have now that I help do that, sometimes it's an hour and a half. I had when it was oh gosh, 4 hours plus the other day, which was mind blowing and everything that he experienced over there. In my experience, when I got out of the hospital, Well, actually, back up a bit. When I read that book back in the 90s, I said, I got to do this. I got to do this. So I called up his office, Dr. Newton's office, and they had a 4-year waiting list. So I
Oh,
went,
wow.
oh, yeah, come on, that's not going to happen, to wait 4 years to have this experience. So, uh, that was that. But then in the hospital, I remember, so I thought, you know what, if I get out of here alive, I want to do that. And just like a miracle happened when I got out, my hospital bill was 200 and something $1,000.
Whoa.
Luckily Medicare paid for a lot of it. But I was kind of broke, but I knew I wanted to do this. So uh, when I called them up, it just so happened that they were doing a new training, and it was 50 miles from my house. Could have been because they're a worldwide organization now. We have trained therapists in 45 countries, so there's 250 of us helping people to visit the afterlife now. So it's very organized. Michael passed away, and we're carrying on the torch right now with training people, and hopefully we can get as many people as we can, because like people have the near-death experience. It's life altering for most people. It's like a person's awareness splits in two. Like they know that I'm talking to them, just like I did. I'm talking to my facilitator, but at the same time, I'm in this other place, kind of like a medium. That's the closest I can say. Although mediums, they could be wide awake and they can see things. They don't need to get to that certain
Hmm.
state of relaxation like most of us. So anyway, it didn't work for me the first time. There was 16 of us in training, and the other 15 had the next day after they tried. Everybody was talking about being in heaven and all. It was the energy in that room with all these people that had just had the experience was crazy. It was neat, and
Hmm.
I'm sitting there like, didn't work for me.
Right.
So I had somebody, one of the experienced practitioners there worked with me for a few days. Second time I did it was a little bumpy. I did get to the past life, and I didn't like what I saw of what I was doing. I was actually a Roman soldier. Actually every time I say that now, I can feel myself on this big kind of thick white horse, and I was going up and down rows of people that I was making sure they were crucified. I was like, so I'm in
Wow.
trance, and that part of me that's me now, excuse me, seeing what I was doing, I started crying, like, oh my God, how did I ever do that? Um, but on my deathbed, I got to see on my deathbed, my daughter was standing next to me, and I was swearing at Caesar, and I was saying to my daughter, I was just like cussing, like F Caesar. It says, I'm never again going to do some things that people tell me to do. I'm never going to do things that people want me to do when I know they're wrong.
Hmm.
Like killing people. Just because I'm ordered to, or just because somebody tells me. And that was my life's lesson, and I think in that lifetime, to learn to not let authority have me do horrible things when I know inside this is not a good thing to do. So then the facilitator has me turn around and say, okay, who's there? Um, and I was stuck I wasn't seeing anything. I was like, I was just in darkness. And now we know it's actually an actual place. I was stuck in what we call the dark. And easiest way I can explain it, it seems that between here and the afterlife, there's a little bit of space, and some people go instantly. Other people kind of take their time going through the no man's land until they get to the other side, and that was me. So my facilitator just says, "Well, just stay there in the black, and if you look around, if you see any kind of light or something, let me know." And a minute later, I saw a pinpoint of red, like a little dot of red, and I said to the facilitator, I said, "Oh, there's a dot of red." He says, "Well, just kind of float over to it." And then instantly I was on the other side, and there was my guide Rebazar. Um, and he proceeded to take me to the first thing I did was visit what we call the soul group. And people that have this experience, they before they have a session, we have them write down who they want to see over there, who do they want to talk to. My dad, my brother, my mom are all on the other side. They've passed away. And first thing I'm walking, it was like a living room almost. Like there was my dad. I said hi to my dad, my mom, who had just passed away a few years before. And at that time, she looked the same age to me as now. And she just gave me this like an angelic smile. And I remember this like, oh, mom, and there was my brother. I said, hey, he died when I was 21 years old, muscular dystrophy. And it was neat to see him again. But then I was off, like they had another agenda for me. So I just said hi, and I'm kind of going through the room. I'm with my guide. And then I find myself before council. And uh, besides, besides people writing down who they want to talk to, what we do is we have them write a list of questions they want to ask on the other side. And everybody wants to, the big question that everybody has is, what the heck am I doing here?
Right. Yeah.
What's my mission? Why did I decide to come to this crazy earth, And this council, it's my council I had, well, I'm seeing mainly the main person, which was a Chinese looking gentleman, whose eyes, when they look at you, you just melt. Late C was his name. And oh my God, I'm seeing his eyes in my mind right now, and it's affecting me because there's so much love coming through those eyes, and humor and joy. Oh man, it just melts you. And he was standing up, and then they had I think two on one side of him and three on the other, and they all had hoods on. So he was just there, and I couldn't really see facial features of the other people on the council. Um, but I had some pre-prepared questions, and they were all answered. I was asking about my, if I'm on the if I'm right where I should be in my mission. They said yes. I said, what did I come down to Earth to do? I kind of know, but I'm not really sure.
Mhm.
And they said, Regan, you had decided when you were going to come down to physical body that you wanted to really, really learn selflessness, kindness. And I said, well, how am I doing? They says, well, we're real proud of you because you're doing pretty good, but don't get high and mighty, because there's always another layer to kindness. There's always another layer to being selfless. And then I said, is there something I'm missing? I mean, I feel like I'm really, connected, and I'm doing good spiritually, but am I missing anything? And they told me one sentence. And when I came out of the experience, I didn't even remember it until I listened to the recording a few days later. And then when I heard it, I went, "Oh my gosh, that's interesting." They said to me one sentence, and then we moved on. They said, "You could be a better grandfather." And when I heard that, listening to the recording later, and I got to thinking, I have 9 grandkids. I have 4 daughters, so I have 9 grandkids.
Mhm.
And I never really had grandparents, so I just thought, my job as a grandparent is show up at Thanksgiving, say hi to everybody, give them a hug, and go.
Right.
But apparently not. So taking that advice, and uh, that session was worth it, even for just this one thing. And
Mhm.
that's that I started connecting now the last 8 years with my grandkids. And it's been like a new life for me because I have all these beautiful young people.
Right.
One of them just graduated college, and then I have my youngest is about 8 years old. That's one thing that I am is really important in my life. Um, the biggest thing that happened to me when I was there, I was on my way back from. Oh, first of all, you're a musician, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And I was a music major in college, but all I was doing is chasing girls. I didn't
Yeah.
really, I couldn't, I could not get myself to learn to read music. As much as I tried, I'd start to play a little bit, and then I'd say, screw it, and I would just improvise. And
Okay.
is what happened. But I'd always wanted to write something. I wanted to create music. So one of my questions that I had to ask the counselor was, is there a place over here in heaven or the afterlife here where people get inspiration for writing music? And they said, yeah. Instantly, I found myself in this room with my guide. I'm hearing this beautiful violin music. And I turned around, and my guide was playing the violin, and he put
Wow.
that down, and he said, Regan, when you want to create, he says, remember, he says, right now, look at, and he had me look at the space. I was on a little riser. It wasn't a big room, but I was on a riser, which represented being, an entertainer in front of people. And he says, I'm going to give you something to remember. So when you remember it, when you begin to write music and you just think of this here, it'll put your consciousness in this space here, and it'll help you to create. So now he's got a fishing pole. It's got a bunch of hooks on it, which is where he says, watch this. This is going to be your anchor, or something to remember. So he took the fishing pole and went out into the audience. And when you bring the pole back, all the hooks had notes on them. But I wrote like 18 songs, produced a CD, and I just recently got my first royalty check, um, which it's like it was $98. They played my songs like 22,000 times, and I made $90. So
Well,
not a
oh
lot of
yeah.
money for people out there getting music, that way. So that was beautiful, like so now I have this, they told me how to connect, to get inspiration, kind of soul level. So the biggest thing that happened to me that, oh man, uh, when I think about it, it was such the most beautiful thing. Here I am now, I'm leaving that space, wherever that space is out there in the universe of this other dimension or wherever heaven exists. And I'm looking down at the earth, my guide's next to me, and from above and just looking down at the earth, there's something so beautiful about it. It's just this ball just kind of floating in the air. And you could see the oceans, I could see everything. It was so, and I said to my guide, I said, wow, this is so beautiful. And then we slowed down, was kind of heading towards earth. We slowed down for a minute. He wanted to ask me something. And so I says, well, what do you want to know? He says, are you sure you want to do this work? And I knew what he meant is the work that I'm doing now, helping other people visit the afterlife.
Okay.
And it's funny, but here I am in deep trance. And I said, F yes. Like, now I'm in trance, but I'm starting to feel all this emotional pain. You've opened yourself up to be kind of an empath. And, and he says, there's four things I want you to do, or doing this work that you just agreed to do. There's four things you got to do, or your physical body won't handle it and you'll die. So I says, okay, let's talk about it for a minute.
Hmm.
I don't want to die doing this work. So here's the four things, and I think this will help people listening because it kind of something we all should do. First thing he says, when you wake up in the morning, declare yourself as a vehicle for spirit, uh, declare yourself as a co-worker, with God, okay, with a higher thing. And then in my mind, oh, well, here's what was interesting too. When he said, I've got four things to do, or you'll die, all of a sudden I was seeing myself, seeing clients, and all of a sudden in my mind, he showed me an hourglass. You know how sand goes in the top and then it goes through the skinny thing, goes down to the bottom. Well, so much happens this in your head when this is happening. Like they show you videos and stuff, and so I was seeing myself see clients, see clients, see clients, and that sand was piling up, and nothing was going through to the bottom. Nothing was going through, and I knew that if that sand got to the top, that's sayonara, because I couldn't handle the energy or I would die. So then he says, do these four things: wake up, declare yourself a vehicle for spirit. Number two is spend more time in nature. And yeah, he was just saying that's God's gift to all of us,
Hmm.
and we kind of intuitively know that, people are just drawn to sunsets. They're, when they go on vacation, they want to just be quiet, walk on the beach. Or third thing he says, do as many random acts of kindness as you can. And I saw myself, had a vision of, I was in a 7-Eleven store and someone threw a Snickers wrapper on the ground, and I picked it up and put it in the trash, even though it wasn't my trash. I picked it up. And then I saw sand going down to the bottom. And the fourth thing, he says, do something practical. He says, talk to other therapists and ask them how they ground themselves. Because he says grounding is very important. So when I'm seeing clients, that I don't take on their issues, that I let that energy just flow through me and not get stuck in me that way. So that was great. And then all of a sudden I'm back and I'm out of the experience. Um, and for the first couple hours, I was kind of disappointed. Now, it seems weird with all that happened, but what happened was because in my mind, I pictured how it was going to be, how he was going to see things and all, because I'd read a lot of the stories, the published research. And it was different. I woke up the next morning. I was like, oh my God, that was so great. it's like I thought I'd see my guide like I'm seeing you, right? Like this. But Rebazar, when like there, the whole time when Rebazar was there, it was like there was a piece of cellophane between us. So it wasn't like crystal clear, but yet when I was in that state, it was no issue. But when I'm thinking about what recorded in my mind and I'm seeing it, and saying it wasn't, crystal clear. Uh, but that was my experience over there. My clients and that I help to go to the other side, it's all over the board. Sometimes when they see themselves pass away and their guide's there and they describe their guide in full color, all the colors,
Mm.
exactly what they look like. And to others, it's I've had others that they don't see your guide, but they go, they did in that state. They go, well, my guide's here. I can just feel him, you
Mm-hmm.
know. I think it has to do with, because some people are more visual, some people are more auditory in this life, like uh, when I've done this with some people that are visually impaired, and the process is a little different because I have to say, tell me what you're feeling. What are you sensing? What are you hearing? Rather than
Mm-hmm.
seeing. And then they have the experience. Well, I can just feel my guides right next to me, and they just know it in that state. But one I had recently, oh my gosh, she just, whew, I'm painting a picture in my mind now of the guide. She was so exact on exactly who, how he looked, what color his eyes were. Then he was a bulldog as far as like, have someone there, and he kept pushing the boundaries. Like, okay, to his client, he says, okay, now you're there. Ask him about this. What happens in the afterlife when we do this? What do souls do here? Does everybody reincarnate again? What do people do when they're in heaven if they don't reincarnate? I mean, is this an end game over there, or what do they do? We know all kinds of things. So uh, I did have an interesting thing uh, a few months ago. A young gentleman came to me. So he goes to a past life, sees himself pass away, and then I say, "Okay, now rise up above the earth, turn around. Who's there to take you home?" And there's this guide, and I said, "What's he look like?" And he says, "He's a shark fin." So I go, okay. And
Wow.
we're asking questions to the shark fin, and he's getting that back, and he knew that was his guide. Well, my client was a marine biologist. So apparently, his guide showed up in a way that was familiar to him, or, because he's a
Right.
marine biologist, that way. And that was kind of interesting. But a lot of times they're like the guide will be like a globe of beautiful light. And
Mm-hmm.
so when people are in that state, it's just normal. They go, "Oh, there's my guide." We're here. We would see something. We would say, "Well, there's an orb. We don't know what it is." But there, when you're in that state, in your soul state, it's normal, natural that way. When people go to their soul groups, they, I'll say, "What's the setting? Are you inside or out?" With me, I was inside there. And sometimes people, I say, "Well, who's there?" And they go, "Oh, there's mom, there's dad." And I'll say, "Well, let's have a conversation with them so they can go up and talk to them." And sometimes they just say, "Oh, I can see there's like 20 orbs, and they're
Mm-hmm.
all different colors. And I can kind of sense my mom's in there somewhere." So I'll say, "Well, just, put the thought out there to have your mom come forward." And they do. And all of a sudden their mom's right in front of them, sometimes in body form, and sometimes just as a ball of energy. And sometimes it's a mixer. Sometimes you'll see like mom's face, and then the rest will be energy or something. But again, in that state, it's normal. And so people have conversations. The coolest thing that we found out, to me, about the afterlife is that in our research, we found out, like, when you decided to be you and I decided to be me, we didn't put all of our soul self into the human body. We kept about half of ourselves on the other side. So that means that when you're on the other side in one of these sessions, you can talk to the higher selves of people still alive in your life now.
Yeah.
Uh, I had a couple to come to me recently, and they've been in couples therapy, and they were like this, Joe. They just they couldn't get to resolution. They loved each other, but they were stuck. So the
Mm.
therapist, knowing what I do, he says, "Well, this is going to seem a little unorthodox, but go see Regan, and maybe he can help you." So when they came to me, what I did is I had the wife go to the other side, the first day, and she talked to his higher self about their issues. Next day, I had him go talk to her higher self, talk about the issues, and then they came back and we talked about it. And they were able to make resolution, were able to get back and kind of get to work and get their marriage repaired. So there's
Wow.
just so much. Now, the second time that I went there was during COVID, and 28 of us Newton therapists, we swapped sessions, and we all went to the other side, asked the councils, because we all had our individual councils, but we asked the same questions. We came back, put a PowerPoint together about, that's what we do in research. You don't just have just one person, but 28 of us went, and we pretty much were told all the same thing. And we asked about the vaccines, all pretty much the same thing. Just for people out there, they go, well, what did you hear? What did they say? Well, on the other side, it's no big deal. It just popped their balloon. They says, well, we asked about COVID. He says it's just it's the Earth, shifting, making changes. They says sometimes the universe uses dark things to bring people to the light.
Hmm.
Um, they said everybody died. They're fine. They're back home. So don't worry about them. They're okay. They're over here. They're happy as heck. Um, and then when I asked about the vaccines, we were hoping to hear, well, Bill Gates has put, something in all those theories, we had, and we asked about the vaccines. They said personal choice.
Yeah.
Want
Yeah.
to take, maybe it'll help you. If you don't, then don't.
Mm.
So that's the thing when you get the bigger picture to things. What we
Mm.
consider serious and all down here is kind of a nothing burger up there.
Right. Yeah, the
Yeah.
other thing is, so thank you so much for explaining a lot of that. What's
Um,
what's what's interesting about all this is that I definitely have a lot of similarities to you.
yeah.
So, oh yeah, like this is, I mean, just sitting here listening to you talk this whole time has been, I mean, and it's been cutting in and out, which has been really frustrating only because I want to hear everything you're saying. So, it'll be an interesting, I think once I put it together, it might be a lot of a much shorter uh
Yeah.
episode, but I got a lot out of what you said, and I'm just gonna kind of reiterate what I've gotten to know so far. But let me explain why I think this is fascinating. So I'm a musician, as you said, you were into music at times and things like that.
Yeah.
Turn podcast host, but I am still teaching and coaching music. But in saying all that, obviously I'm in love with the whole spiritual sense of the ideologies of near death experiences and spiritual transformative experiences and all these things. This happened when I was a lot younger, and I've just recently done some certifications in spiritual life coaching, in
Oh, great.
energy healing, and now I'm actually working in hypnotherapy. So trying to actually get a certification in hypnotherapy to work in past life regression. So
Oh,
this is stuff that nobody knows about, right? So
yeah.
this is just something I've been doing in the background. So I'm listening to what you're saying, and the reason is this is where I had a few questions around it. So I want
Yeah.
to get into this work because I'll always be coaching music at some level, but I do want to
Yeah.
start diving into more of this type of stuff because I had a past life regression done about 10, maybe it would have been, yeah, about 10 years ago now.
Yeah.
And it was unbelievable. I pulled out some fascinating. So that the hypnotist that was doing it, as much as he was is good at it, he was also a bit of a skeptic because he had just started diving into it, but kind of from a more skeptical side of things. He didn't really. It's not that he didn't believe in the afterlife, but he had no
Yeah.
reason to have. But he still was starting to work in it. And after my session, some of the stuff I pulled out, it really kind of blew his mind because
Ah,
what had happened was, so this is what I want to try to figure out is because when I was under the hypnosis, I didn't go somewhere else. I didn't, have this mind-blowing experience where I seen things and, because some people have NDEs, they literally say it's more real than here. They'll say things of that nature. That's not the way I experienced it. I experienced it, and you probably talk to different people that have different types of ways that they experience it. But I experienced it in the sense of it almost was like forceful dreaming, where they would be asked the question, and it was just boom, I would just say exactly what I'd seen. I remember in one of them, I looked down and I was like this absolutely drop dead gorgeous Greek woman from the 1600s. And it turned out I was
yeah.
I was the wife of a very rich, wealthy man who sold jewelry, and but I was very lonely because I knew, number one, that this man was probably messing around on me, but I was his trophy wife, and I was this younger trophy wife, and so I had that experience, and when I was in that experience, I remember becoming almost more like, and I'm kind of like a guy's guy, but I started becoming more feminine in the way I was explaining how I
Yeah,
looked. And then not only that, I gave a name of what my name was. And I knew nothing about, I mean, I'm half, you know, Ukrainian. I have some Ukrainian in me. Like I don't have, I'm not Greek in any way. So
yeah,
I know nothing about Greek history, but I'd given this name, and and then I had two other experiences which were very vivid. I could see everything. But after I woke up and I went, wow, it felt like 20 minutes, but it was 3 hours. And
yeah,
I went home that night and I just couldn't get that one storyline out of my mind, this life I'd had. So I Googled the name, and it turned out it was one of the top names for women in the 1600s in Greece.
wow,
And I Google searched it and it kind of auto corrected, but it was very close to what I thought I had said. In my mind, I was like, how would I have known that? So
yeah.
I didn't know
You
what
know,
you
Brian
felt.
Weiss,
Yeah.
yeah, Brian Weiss, who's kind of the godfather of, he wrote Many Lives, Many Masters, and he's been on all the talk shows and stuff. On my website, I have a video of him on Oprah, I think, talking about past lives. He had helped he had done hundreds of sessions of past life stuff, and he still didn't know if he believed in the afterlife. And then finally one day, his son had passed away, and he's with a client, and they're in a past life, and all of a sudden, the client interrupts him and says, "Oh, someone's here, and they have a message for you." So who is it? He says it's your son, and his son had they had a little conversation back through that, and then all of a sudden, Dr.
Wow.
Weiss was like, "Oh my God, that is my son. No one would have known that but him." And here he is talking through my client, and that's when. And now he's totally on board. He's become a very spiritual individual in that. So yeah, it's the past life thing is a little different than when you go beyond that to where you go between lives, because when you're having a past life thing, you're seeing physical things like just like in this lifetime. If I said, okay, remember when you and your dad went to the park or something, and then you go, oh yeah, and you can see that image because it's recorded in there. And so
Hmm.
when you go to a past life, it's just like another physical world video that you're playing. Okay.
Hmm.
And when things change is when you leave that body, and all of a sudden you're in spirit, and then you're everything. So yeah, I had a matter of fact, we could do a show just one time on past life regression on past lives. That's a step towards the between lives thing. And I that's one of my favorite parts about doing these sessions with everybody is I just want to see who they are. This week, I had a guy fly in from Florida to have a session, and I've spent 7 hours with him. And uh, he was uh, he'd had this thing about Anne Frank and the Holocaust. There's something happened a couple of years ago, and he heard the name Anne Frank, and it just started resonating with him. So he found out who she was. He wasn't really sure, and then all of a sudden he realized, oh, she died in the Holocaust. But there was something in him. He would start crying, and he have so much emotion, and his wife thinks he's crazy, but it's almost like he just felt so much love for her, and he
Hmm.
did all this research. And everything. Well, when he went to his soul group, well, actually, he went to a past life, um, and then he turns around. I say, "Well, who's there?" And it was Anne Frank, was his guide. And the whole time in this whole process, Anne Frank was with him. When he went to his soul group, he was expecting to see his mom, his dad, his brother, all of his peoples in this lifetime. And there was a line, like it looked like 40 or 50 people long that were in his soul group. And the first four or five were Anne Frank's relatives. And they were dressed
Wow.
in their Jewish, in their things. And he saw Anne Frank's sister and the mom and dad. Come to find out, he's part of their soul group. That's his main soul
Mm.
group. So So that was a great he says, no, now I know I'm not crazy. He says, I couldn't understand this obsession with
Yeah.
Anne Frank that I
Hmm.
got, once I
Hmm.
established this connection. So it was very healing for him to see his connection to all this, And
Yeah.
uh, yeah, and what he did on things he saw, he went back and doing more research, and he found, he says they were wearing, or she was wearing, at one point he saw her and she was wearing brown. He expected to see striped pajamas, how you see the Holocaust people that had all those striped things. Instead, it was wearing brown. And then he found out that the people that were doing gardening at this one camp or something like this all wore brown. And that's how the guards could tell those people are in charge of gardening, because of the
Wow.
things they're wearing. So all kinds of things. So yeah,
And he found that
interesting.
out after he found that out, like he didn't know
Yeah, some
that
of it
really.
just he called me and said, yeah, look at, I says, look, this is what I saw. Now look, you know.
Right.
So what makes the past life things real for some people is when things happen that they go, I couldn't have, I know, I'm thinking I'm making this stuff up, because you're
Yeah.
aware that you're in trance and you're seeing these images, and part of your mind's going, is this just my imagination,
Right.
making this up or something? Um, but Bob, a few years ago, came to me. He found himself as a woman in a past life, and I had him go to an important event, and he's laying on my hypnotherapist couch, and all of a sudden he's moaning and groaning. Oh, I said, what's happening? He goes, I'm having a baby. And so I says, okay, 1, 2, 3, you've just had the baby. Regan, that was freaking weird. He says, there's no
Yeah.
way I'm making up a story in my mind. I'm having a baby. Then I
Yeah.
can feel that baby coming out of me.
Yeah.
Uh, so things happen like that.
One of the things that really fascinated me about one of my experiences, I was a farmer and from the 1500s, so I'd gone 100 years before the Greek uh, experience. And it was a whole experience.
Yeah,
It was tragic. I had lost my wife in a house fire, and I was a farmer, and she had accidentally gone, the kitchen had gone on fire, and I found her on the floor, and it was really dramatic. Like it hurt my, he had to take me out of it for a minute because I was getting so emotional, and because it was such a strong loss. And I remember though, when we went back to when I had
yeah,
met my wife in that life, we would go to, and I knew nothing, and this was in England, or around that area, and I knew nothing again about this history. This is what I want people to understand. And we would go to this farmers market type thing. Like everybody would gather at the farmers market and get their, vegetables, fruits, whatever it was you were getting at the time. That's where it was kind of like the downtown, but it was a very small, everything was just made a certain way. And I remember walking down, this is how detailed I was seeing things.
yeah.
I was walking down the path.
That's good. You see,
Yeah, I was walking down the path where people would have these stands of their items they were selling. And I remember looking at the ground and seeing rocks, large like boulder rocks, like maybe this big, um, in the ground, but just the top of them, just the top of the boulders, just the top of the rocks, and knowing, I don't know
Mhm.
why, I just remember this detail, knowing how the road was created, that they would put these stones in the ground and then cover it with dirt and so that you could walk on it, but it was, like if you were to think of how concrete is made now or pavement or whatnot in this life or a road, I would know that they were laying
Yeah.
down tar or whatever they're doing. Well, I understood the detail of how these roads were created in my experience.
Oh,
I'm a musician. I'm not into any type of construction. I know nothing about this stuff. But in that life or in that experience, I was fascinated by this because I was this big,
yeah,
buffy kind of farmer dude. I must have been six. I'm a short guy in this life. I must have been like 6'4". I was a big guy, larger man. And I remember thinking about this. And then sure enough, I came back and I'm looking things up, and that's how they used to make the roads. They put these rocks in the roads, they'd
yeah,
cover it up, and you just see the top ends of the rock. And I could see that that's how they made these nice paths for people to walk down.
So they use like the dirt just to fill in instead of mortar. They use the dirt just to fill in
Just to fill
and
in,
to
yeah.
level it.
Yeah, I mean it was the 1500s. We weren't doing anything too but I didn't know that. Like I knew
Yeah.
nothing of that and I was pulling this stuff back. So when I explained this in the I mean, I think that's what really got the he was like, "Wow, like you're very detailed like you went right." I was gone within 2 seconds when he was counting down, first of all. Um I was gone fast and then I was in it. And
Yeah.
so it's just I think that's what's really fascinated me with everything and why I'd love to get more into this kind of work is because it was such a it was pretty dramatic for me to know the details of those things of things I would not normally know.
Yeah. Yeah. It'd be exciting. So most of the time, I would say 99 or 95% of the time, people's past lives are what we call digging potatoes lives. Like people think, oh, I'm going to be Cleopatra, or I'm going to be a king, I'm going to be somebody famous. And they just find themselves out in the field working, walking down a lonely road, pulling a cow behind them,
Right. Right.
kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that makes it more real to people too, because they say, if I'm going to use my imagination to make up a past life, it's going to be something dramatic, something flashy, or something. It's not me that I'm just sitting milking a cow. You
Right.
know.
Right. What's really fascinating though is I have an extreme connection in my whatever to Egypt.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yes.
and I don't know where that comes from. I know I've been told I've done this rodeo quite a few times. I don't know how many more of these things I'm doing. So if I'm connected to Egypt, that's quite a while ago. So
Yeah.
I've always I sometimes when I was a kid, if I'd see videos of like the pyramids and things, I would actually start to get an emotional reaction.
Yeah. I do
Yeah.
too, for some reason. When
Yeah.
I'm just there's I think a lot of us, were
We
alive
come
back
from
then.
there.
That's why the pyramids have such a draw, so like we just feel this something otherworldly about those.
Right. Right. Do
Yeah.
you ever have anybody that comes that has those experiences, Egyptian experiences?
Yes, actually, right mind. Two. I'm thinking of two cases. One was I went to Las Vegas to do a session for a woman, and my friend had referred me to her, and he was in Las Vegas, and she wanted to come. So I went down there. I could see my friend, and we were in this big mansion. This guy buys these houses that have like 6 and 7 and 8 bedrooms, these big houses, and then he turns them into corporate things where people have retreats and stuff, where corporate can come and take it over. Well, anyway, it was empty at the time, and my friend, he was a friend of my friend, and he says, "Oh, just take the house." So he decided to have a big. He asked this girl, Stacy was her name, to come, and so I went. Okay, so I went there, and so talked to her the night before, and the next day we're going to have the session. She's all ready. Well, there was another man that was there that was a born again. I mean, a really like born again kind of Christian guy. And when he heard she was going to do a past life thing, he just, oh my God, he got into her space so bad. And he just told her, hey, the devil's going to come out in there. You're going to unleash all kinds of stuff. You're going to go to hell if you do this. And so it scared her. So the next morning she says, Regan, I'm sorry, but I think I'm freaking out. I can't do this. And I said, okay, no problem. So, but then her friend who she came there with says, well, can I do it? And I
Mm,
said, okay, how about that? I said, great. So I have someone. So I said, let's just do a simple past life regression. She finds herself in Egypt, um, and she's wearing this beautiful white this gown. And come to find out that she's in society there, and her brother, both her and her brother, he would have been the next. And so I had her go to an important event, and her brother stabbed her to death. You know, so he could be the top one. It was
wow.
very emotional for her because it was very bloody, kind of thing. So the other
Wow.
one I had was kind of interesting. He was a bookkeeper. Now he's not the pharaoh, but he was the accountant or the books guy for the pharaoh, and he had 7 concubines himself, and one of them he was in love with. The other ones were just other women that he was with and stuff. Well, it's interesting because in this lifetime he's in the swinging lifestyle. In other words, he
Mm,
says, I don't know why, but so he's a swinger. and then he just got married, and he thought his wife that he married to was going to be okay with this, because some couples are,
Yeah.
it found out when she finally realized everything, she says, no way, like this. So one of his questions to the counsel on the other side was, what am I going to do now, or something? And they says, well, sir, you're just going to have to live with the memory of having all those concubines from that past life you just saw, he was going, oh darn, oh my God, there's something there. So,
Interesting.
but it was a good life, He was the way he described Egypt and everything. Then it was like beautiful,
Hmm.
It was a good life in that. And he had all these women, and he was the bookkeeper and all that. And I forget how he died. But one of the questions we asked, like when we got him to the afterlife, I asked him, I says, if you ever incarnate another planet or another dimension, we're doing, and then so I'll say to the council, can my client leave the council for a moment and take me to that planet? And just because we're doing research here. And they say, sure. Oh man, this is really exciting stuff. I had uh, one guy who was he was on this planet where they had he says this planet, if you're looking at Earth terms, would have 50 years of darkness and 50 years of light, the way it was, whatever it was. And he said during the darkness, they depleted a lot of the important minerals on the planet. So he was on a spaceship with his co-pilot, and they were searching around other planets so they could get their people from the world to go there to mine the minerals they needed to take back to their planet. And then he's right in the middle of it, and he goes, "Fuck." I go, what happened? He goes, fucking co-pilot, we just crashed. The co-pilot took a wrong turn, and he ended up dying
Oh,
on this
wow.
other planet. But when he
That's
came out of that, he goes, Regan, that was weird. He says, I'm not thinking any of this stuff. And here I am. I says, I could see him right next to me there, and how mad I was that, that this co-pilot jerk, crashed us and killed us, So,
wow. That's
but
that's fascinating.
uh,
Wow. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. I think did you were cutting out a little bit in and out, but I think I got a lot of what you said there.
there's a reason for us talking today, and I think it's for
Oh,
me to give you some information uh,
yes, because I
to
was
help.
gonna so I'm right in the midst of just getting the certification. The thing is the certification is really just learning about everything. It's really getting to understand how to use, the skills and things like I am an empath, 100%. There's a reason why I'm doing all this stuff. Um, but I do want to learn more, and I was actually going to ask you because there's probably other people listening to this show who, might be fascinated in the work that you have done. Is there like a place that you like, do you have a website or anything that people connect with you? I know you said you
Oh,
had a book as well, right?
yeah,
So I'm wondering how people see that information of what you've done.
very simple. My website, and see if I don't chop this up here. It's visittheafterlife.com. Real simple, visittheafterlife.com. And yeah, if they go to visittheafterlife.com, there's a whole bunch of videos and things on there about past life regression, about the life between lives, which is going beyond that. There's also a section on traditional therapy. I have a regular therapy practice too, where I specialize in post-traumatic stress, uh, fears and phobias, that sort of thing. I wrote another book called Phobias Gone in 1 Hour. And it just this is another thing we could do a show on, Joe, sometimes, because energy psychology is taking over the therapy community, where um, you know uh, there's different modalities that are out there now that work really, really fast on helping people with PTSD. Sometimes in 3 or 4 sessions, it's the same place where they'd be in traditional therapy where they've gone for years. And I see miracles happen in front of me all the time,
Wow.
using some of this energy psychology, which is EFT, which is tapping, which is like tapping on the different parts of your body that balance your energy. Havening touch, which is the new kid on the block, which works really good. And then EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization. That's good for people to know, because they need to find these practitioners that do that instead of, sitting and talking. And when you sit and talk, your issue just comes up and you start feeling horrible again. And every week you go there and you slowly desensitize yourself, and it just takes forever that way. Where this stuff, they're talking about, as they're talking about it, we're doing these things, and they just down regulate. And
Hmm.
all of a sudden they go, oh my God, I'm not falling apart right now. And they go, out because we've balanced the energy in your body that was disrupted. So that make a great topic sometimes for people.
So you had that book. I just like people to know,
Oh,
checking out your book.
yeah,
I
the
think it was
book is
3 hours,
uh,
33 minutes.
3 hours. Yeah, and have it. It's available on most places. People buy books on the internet, but it's on my website. If you just click it, it takes you to Amazon. You
Oh,
know that
okay.
you go there. Also, to people listening, I'll give away. There's another book I have called "Reincarnation is Real," and it's about all the current research being done, and it's kind of an interactive ebook where you read something about the past lives things, and then you click on the link, and it takes you to a YouTube video that's about that particular thing. So it's kind of a fun little book. And anybody that mentions your show or something, I'll send them a free ebook
Oh, that's
called Real.
amazing.
Yeah.
The one thing I wanted to say, I do want to just say that I appreciate you going through everything today. I always end the show
Sure.
though with one question, and that question is, and yours might come up. You've had your own experience. You've had all these people you've talked to over the years. The main question I always ask people is, why do you think it is that we are here? Like, what is, in a general sense, the purpose of our existence here on Earth?
Okay, I got a good answer for this one. I'll try to be short, okay?
Okay.
But what I found out from my experience going to the other side and from the hundreds of people that I've helped go to the other side, uh, they the one thing that they say we're supposed to do is we're supposed to through whatever mission we picked. In other words, from the other side, the missions that we picked to come down here to things to go through. It's all about learning love. It's all about learning kindness.
Mm,
It's learning how to get up every morning and put more pluses on the board instead of minuses. The second time that I went over there, I asked that question. I said, well, what the question I asked was, why are you allowing me and us 250 therapists, why are you allowing us to bring people over here to heaven or to the afterlife and back? What's going on, you know? And they said three things. They says, we want to show people that their life has meaning and purpose, that they're here for a reason. And it's always a positive reason, even though it might be difficult what you're going down here for. It's all about progressing and learning to have more kindness and compassion and selflessness and patience.
mm,
And the second thing they said is uh, it's to show them that they're never alone. And because everybody that goes to the other side, they meet their guide. There's always somebody that's kind of your buddy on the other side that's in charge of you, that's kind of whispering to you throughout the day. Most of the time we're like this instead of like this. And the third thing, the afterlife is real. And they're hoping that by people having this 2 hour thing on the other side, and they all of a sudden they see that they discover their mission, they discover that the afterlife is real. Uh, and um, uh, and so when they come back from that, what their hope is that everybody gets to work and gets on, because a lot of us have kind of got off track a bit, you know,
mm,
with what our mission is. It's time to get back on track, especially with what the world's going through at the very moment. And everybody can feel it, whether you're religious or not religious or spiritual, whatever. You can feel something's going on right now.
mm-hmm.
Big shift in our consciousness, you know.
Oh yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
just
That's
wake up in the day. Like I say, declare yourself as a vehicle for kindness. Don't be too upset with yourself if you do a few negative things because we're human. But just when you go to bed at night, just go, yeah, I was going to be selfish today and I didn't. Yay!
yeah.
Plus,
Right, right.
you
I
know,
love that.
yeah, just wake up, put more pluses on there, and not so many minuses.
That's amazing. This has been an amazing conversation. I want to thank you for coming on. I always like to turn to the audience and say, please continue to like, share, and subscribe to the Soul Inspired so we can keep getting amazing guests on like Regan. This was the first time I've had someone on who has been into hypnotherapy and everything. So that's really a fascinating subject, and I think I would love to have you back. And but thank you so much for coming on the Soul Inspired today. I really appreciate
You're
it.
welcome. I'm happy to anytime.
So